looks like the sun's out today, although it feels like it's dimming a lot quicker than usual for some reason. And what's going on today? Because the first thing I read was kind of interesting. How about this one, where you read the stories about Ukraine asking for recreational drone flyers, for example, hobbyists, to help them, I guess, monitor the area with drones. And how about this? It says, Canada actively looking at sending drone cameras to Ukraine. The Canadian government is looking at providing Ukraine with drone cameras to assist Kyiv in its fight against Russia. National Defense Minister Anita Anand has said. She made the comments Monday in an exclusive interview with Global News' Mercedes Stephenson in Latvia, where Anand, along with General Wayne Eyre, Chief of the Defense Staff, is meeting with NATO counterparts to discuss Canada's response to Russia's ongoing invasion of neighboring Ukraine. And it says, we are actively examining ways in which we could assist the Ukrainian army with that equipment. Anand said when asked if Canada was considering providing more cameras to Ukraine to use on drones. It's kind of interesting because according to this, you've often heard about those Turkish drones and they say the cameras are made in Canada apparently. It says, the federal government has not publicly disclosed or promised sending any cameras, but videos circulating online and on social media show Turkish-made drones being used to destroy Russian columns and artillery. The precision cameras mounted on the Bayraktar TB2 drones are Canadian-made, a military source has confirmed to Global News. That's kind of interesting to know in that sense, because in terms of flying drones and stuff like that, you usually don't think of Canada for a lot of this stuff in terms of recreational and all that, and most of them are from China as an example, like DJI. With that in mind, in terms of things like military drones, I'd often said it's ridiculous when everyone considers a small toy, for example, as some kind of military drone, when people are just flying it for fun and all that. There should be a clear, distinct difference, not over-the-top regulations. So I thought this was kind of interesting as I read a comment today where somebody, I guess, is defending the fact that the exams here in Canada, they're really ridiculous for drone operators. They have irrelevant questions and all that, but this guy actually tries to justify it. Now, he did edit his comment, but this is what he wrote at first, and I thought it'd be interesting to kind of go over it, and you could decide yourself too. What would you say in this case, and how would you react? So this is basically in a reply to the video where I basically evaluated that basic exam, how it's ridiculous. And it says here, I think it's good for the test to not be super easy. Do we otherwise want it to be so easy that anyone can fly a drone and we will get terrible reputations from crazies causing trouble? Have you seen what they consider again as a quote drone? Toys, literally small little toys. They consider that as huge aircrafts. And in terms of crazies, honestly, during these times with these regulations, the main quote crazy people I have seen are people who are unaware of the topic in general. They just see like a mainstream news and like, oh, it's spying on me, or it's like a military drone. It's completely ridiculous. And they end up harassing or potentially threatening people's lives who are just flying like a drone for fun or something like that. Like what, those news about people firing arrows at drones? When did that ever happen? Until stuff like this were implemented. As well, I often said too, if you're gonna do an exam about safety and stuff like that, it should actually teach people how to be safe in actually flying the item. Not questions, for example, about, oh, this and that cloud and so forth that's completely unrelated to how the mass majority of people would use it. But he replies here, basically it's edited, it says, the test is not to know if you can fly a drone. It's to encourage people to be knowledgeable about aviation. Passing the test is not the point. It's to create a more serious group of drone flyers instead of random immature crazies who don't care and don't even know the basic stuff. The safety thing is common sense. Making the test a bit harder is better for us guys who are more serious than just buying a drone, getting drunk, and flying it like a lunatic. Do you agree that a drone can be dangerous? So it's to our benefit to keep the crazies away. We don't want a bad rap so that every time someone sees a drone, they get nervous and pissed off. You are right that having cool apps would be good, but it's first more important to keep our drone fun out of the hands of irresponsible people. When you think about it, isn't that ridiculous that people have that type of mentality, in my opinion? Because you're kind of admitting in many ways this test doesn't actually make people, let's just say, quote, safer. The goal of it, fundamentally, is to make it kind of ridiculous in a way where a large portion of the population will just say, oh, forget it, I'm not going to do it. How does that make sense? You don't do this in any other aspects of life. Now, first I did comment to him, like a reply, and I read his other comments too, and it was kind of flawed. He kind of uses the same template arguments in my opinion. But I replied here saying, your comment makes no sense unless you are going to be consistent in life and say that for everything else. For example, if there was such a thing as a bicycle test, then you would agree that the point isn't to learn how to ride a bicycle. Instead, you think it's logical that a bicycle test should ask questions how a car produces motion to move, or even how a child riding a bicycle just around their own block needs to learn how to check the radio for highway traffic reports before going out. And this is the important thing too, that a lot of people neglect in their arguments in my opinion. And I say here, do you know how broad the definition of a drone is, such as getting into model aircrafts where people fly in a field, or literal toys that can only fly so low for maybe 5 minutes? Again, I look for consistency in life as well, and this is not how we handle anything, such as with the irrelevant questions that don't pertain to actual drone users to make things safer. And I even said this video is actually kind of old because I was pretty much the first one to really crack down on how ridiculous this exam was. I said, and since this video, you can't deny the facts. What are the major incidents in Canada so far with proven documented proof and not just theory? It was police officers literally crashing their drones into helicopters and airplanes. So with all the facts according to you, would you agree still that the test is not to know if you can fly a drone makes perfect sense in every way? Because like there, it just further proves passing a test with a focus on things like learning about clouds doesn't do much for safety overall. And I say your first step should be to use real drone operators. And again, drone is very broadly defined to cover various items to find out what it's really like to use one. I highly doubt you say in life, as an example, anything that has wheels poses a danger on the road, so everyone needs exams and registration. Or do you? And then again, I read his other comments how he keeps using car analogies and licenses, which in my opinion is completely flawed when you break it down. Because again, when you look at a road, think of how many people use a road. Bicycles, for example, pedestrians passing when it's their turn in the traffic lights and so forth. You don't ask them, for example, hey, pedestrian with a stroller that has a wheel, where's your driver's license to actually cross the road? Even though it's green on your side, you can walk now. I want to see the license. You took an exam. So to end it, I say, side note, in seeing your other comments, your analogies are flawed as well if you're trying to use the car license analogy. Really think about it, as that is not how roads and vehicles are managed when you factor in everything. And I make it clear, I tell them, hint, think of everything that uses the road each day. Again, you don't require everyone who uses a quote road to have some kind of driver's license because they pose a hazard. Everybody shares it with certain stipulations. It's more about basic traffic management. With the way these things are done, like with the exams and so forth, again, why would you ask like a bicycle rider questions about, let's just say, how does a motor run in a car? A car might use the road, but it doesn't make any sense. Why would they need to know that? They just need to know basic traffic management, like here's your lane, that's their lane, etc., etc. Or at the same time, with the way the rules are, technically it's always a drone operator's responsibility to get out of the way of manned aircraft. That doesn't make sense. Even with, like, let's just say a car, for example, it should come down to, okay, who should be where and when. For example, if there's a drone flying, let's just say below these tree lines, what the heck is a huge manned airplane doing down here? So you're telling me if that airplane swooped down here 90 meters, 80 meters, 20 meters to the ground, hits a drone or whatever, oh, it's a drone's fault. Don't you think it's an airplane? What are you doing down here, man? Same thing with like a vehicle on the road. Cars don't have 100% immunity. If they drive off the road, they go into the, I don't know, the bike lane, they hit a bicycle rider, are you gonna say to the bicycle rider, hey, you should have got out of the way for that car? No, you have basic traffic management. That's how it should be done. Basic common sense, for example. And unfortunately too, it kind of creates, like in this situation where, from my experience, people who really encourage over-the-top regulations like that, maybe this person is like that, I don't know, but it seems like it's more of a way to act superior, like, hey, I passed this and so forth, I have this and that, I'm more quote professional than you, I'm quote more serious than you. Yeah, right. That's not the case from my experience. It seems like for the most part, a lot of the people who are like that, they're either have some kind of commercial benefit in terms of restricting everyone because they want to be the only ones to do it, or at the same time, it makes them feel superior for some odd reason. I think this is a fact too. If you take most people, let's just say, who say they are such a professional, they're so serious about quote drones, with how broad the definition of drone is, how many of these people would be able to fly a drone without, let's just say, GPS stability? I highly doubt most of them could actually do that. Because even like these exams are all based on things like quadcopter DJI drones. Give them like a toy drone, okay, Mr. Professional, like this person here, if you're kind of like in that mentality where you're better than everyone else in that sense, do you think you would be able to fly something like that afterwards? I don't think you would, correct? Or since it covers things like model aircrafts and stuff, if someone just gave that to you right now, would you be able to fly that as well? Maybe you can, but I just know for the mass majority of people, they probably can't because their only basis of a quote drone is again, things like a quadcopter, a DJI, Autel, Skydio that has all these automated functions and so forth. You gotta realize how broad this thing is in terms of their classification of a drone. It will be as ridiculous as saying, again, everything that has wheels is a quote car and should be treated as one. That is ludicrous. So what would you say? Would you agree with a person like that? I know for myself, when it comes to situations like these, I often ask people too, are you someone who's against prejudice and discrimination, or are you just pro your own rights? Because again, if you try to answer any of those questions transparently, people end up being a hypocrite afterwards, and afterwards they can only attack you personally and all that. I mean, think about anything else in life. Let's just use tech as an example of how ridiculous it would be. It's still true nowadays, not as bad as, let's just say, way back, but a lot of people would say if you use computers and stuff, oh, you're a geek. You sit in the basement, you hack people's information, you're a criminal. So because of that, we need to put exams and registrations on people like you, because anyone who accesses a computer, it can be used for bad things, right? So it doesn't make sense when people use that argument, in my opinion. That's not how you treat other things in life. You take care of those incidents specifically. So to say again, to justify over-the-top regulations that don't actually deal with, let's say, quote, safety, teaching people how to fly, that is ludicrous. To me, that's the unfortunate thing too, because like in those examples, like here, where if it's actual drone operators always saying stuff like that, it is no different fundamentally than you take any other topic it is. It could be, for example, like I said, things, for example, that were racist or discriminating in terms of regulations, and then those groups of people say, oh, it's because of quote people like you, why you have stuff like this. I mean, shouldn't your basically end goal to try to educate people saying not everyone is like this? You need to get that out of your head of what you see like in, say, quote, movies or sensational news headlines. Treat people for who they are. Actually, that was a great example with the drone there. I was basically flying it just to capture things as the scenery. People got super interested. They were with a bunch of dogs and so forth. So I was like, okay, let's capture stuff down here for fun. They're like, oh, have the dog chasing and so forth. Can you imagine if you constantly fear-mongered, still saying, oh, everything is like a huge weapon and so forth. Even the kids afterwards were like, oh, I'm really interested in this stuff now. And you need that type of, I guess, innovation and growth as well. Because you don't treat anything else in life like how they treat like these drone exams and regulations in general. They're just ridiculous in my opinion. Alright, see you guys later.